Hey y'all, Traveling Prepper here. Today I'm going to show you how to prepare and cook fried mush. Fried mush is typically thought of as a breakfast food. You could use it with other things and didn't have to necessarily be breakfast, but it wasn't the household I grew up in. Everything I need to make this is in my food storage pantry. It costs pennies to make and it's quite filling. So the recipe I'm using is my mama's, and it was most likely her mama's or her grandma's. But I have cut the recipe in half from what my mama used to make because there's only 2 of us. So I don't see any reason to make a huge batch of this when there's only 2 of us eating it. Okay, let's get started. First, you're going to need a stainless steel bowl or some kind of a large bowl to combine it in. And then in that bowl, you're going to add 1 cup of polenta. Polenta is more of a fine grind than what we'd normally use in America. We normally use cornmeal. Cornmeal is a coarser grind than what polenta is. And in that, I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of salt. And just sort of mix that together a little bit just so it's combined. And then 1/8 of a cup of sugar, or it's 2 tablespoons. Mix it all together. I am using coconut sugar instead of granulated sugar because coconut sugar is what I use. It's lower GI/GL than regular cane sugar, so I use coconut. The only thing I don't use coconut sugar in is when I'm doing pickled beets or making jellies, like preserves kind of thing, because it just doesn't solidify back the way normal granulated sugar does. And then to that, I'm going to add 1 cup of water. And I'm just going to mix that all together because this is just the first part, because then we're going to have to cook it down after this. And just mix that all together until it's all incorporated. And so what we're going to do next is on the stove, we're going to put 3 cups of water in a big pot, along with, the recipe calls for 1/4 of a stick of butter, which would be equivalent to 1.5 tablespoons. But I'm going to use coconut oil because obviously I store coconut oil. I don't store butter. And in a SHTF situation, you may not be able to get your hands on butter. So coconut oil is what I'm going to use. And really, when it calls for, most specifically when it calls for butter, they're actually asking for some kind of a fat. So that's what we're going to do. Now I'll take you over to the stove. Okay, so we're over to the stove. In the pot, I have 3 cups of water, and then I've put 1.5 tablespoons of coconut oil in here. I'm just going to go ahead and turn that on and let that melt. Once it's melted, I will bring it back and show you what I do from here. Okay, so the coconut oil is mostly melted, so now I'm going to add our mix. As you can tell, it's sort of solidifying already. It's soaked up a lot of the water. So we're going to put that in there and scrape out the bowl as much as we can, get it all. And then what we're going to do from here is, as it starts to heat, it'll start getting thicker. Once it starts thickening up, I'm going to turn the temperature down to low, and I'm going to let it cook for an hour. And I'm going to stir it occasionally just so it doesn't really stick too bad to the bottom. I mean, it's going to stick a little bit because that's just what it's going to do, but the oil is going to help it not stick it quite as much as it could. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and start cooking it down, and I'll bring you back once I got it cooked down to where it's thick enough, and I'll show you what to do next. Okay, so here we are about 20 minutes in, and I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's starting to have what looks like a little boiling, but it's very quick, and then it's every so often it'll go bloop, and a big bubble will come up. But it just relieves, see it's over here as well. You can see it's starting to boil, which is what you want. You just want it to cook down and just get thicker. And it is, as you can tell, there's not as much water in there as there was to begin with. So I just thought I'd share that with you. You can see it's starting to boil around the edges as well. Okay, so it's been an hour, it's cooked down, and now it is time to go on to the next step. This part, what you do is you take a loaf pan. If you're using metal, then take some cold water and rinse it in cold water. That way the loaf pan's very, very cold. I'm not going to do that with this because it's ceramic, but you're going to take it and you're just going to dump it in. I'm hoping I don't crack my loaf pan. And as you can see, this is a half a batch and it's filling up this regular size loaf pan. So a normal size batch would fill up 2 of these. All right, let me get right back. You don't want to scrape the bottom of the pan because, as you can tell, it's stuck some. And you don't want to scrape that out because you don't want that to go into your pan, into your loaf pan. So then you're just going to try to smooth it out, make it fairly even if you can. Because however it is on top is how it's going to stay. So now all you're going to do is you are going to cover it with parchment paper or wax paper and leave it sit at room temperature. You're not going to want to push it down very much, just get it to where it's sort of folded over a bit. Leave it sit there until it reaches room temperature, and then you're going to stick it into the refrigerator and leave it sit there for 24 hours or overnight, which is what I'm doing. And then I'll make it for breakfast tomorrow morning, and I'll bring you back tomorrow morning and show you how to take it from here. Okay, so here we are. It's the next morning, and my mush has been in the refrigerator overnight, and this is what it looks like. So now I'm going to take it and I'm going to dump it out of the loaf pan and onto the plate. What that does is it'll give me a flat area that I can cut it on and take it to the skillet versus cutting on a cutting board and then transferring it to a plate to take it to the skillet. I've already washed my hands because it should just dump right out. Right like that. I'm just going to sit that on there like that. And I'm going to slice it in approximately 1 centimeter slices, because that you want it to be able to be soft on the inside and crunchy on the outside when you cook it. I already have the skillets on the stove preheating. I'm using coconut oil to heat it up, to cook it in. And I'm using 2 skillets because the stove that I use, it doesn't heat the outside of the iron very well. If you're cooking over an open fire, mush is amazing. So I'm going to go ahead and take you over to the stove and we will get started. Okay, as I've said, I've preheated my pans on about a medium-high heat. You don't want them too hot because you don't want to cook the outside too rapidly and not have the inside get warm and mushy. And I'm just going to put those on. Be careful because it will pop because there's a lot of water in mush. And once you get them on, don't mess about with them. So don't try flipping them over too early, because if you do, they will just end up sticking to the pan. Because, like that one's already stuck, because the water just makes them stick. So you don't want to try to flip them. You leave them on until when you look at them and the outside underneath starts to become a golden brown. At that point, you can start to flip them over. I'm going to let them cook, and I will bring you back when it's time for me to flip them. Okay, so I'm not quite sure if you can tell. The outside ones aren't cooking as fast as the inside ones because the inside ones are directly over the burner. Let me see if I can get one from the middle, because they can get flipped without me damaging the ones on the outside. Nice and golden brown, just the way you want it. Once you flip them, you can't move them because they have a tendency of sticking. But that's what they should look like. They should look nice and beautiful and golden. This skillet's not as seasoned as the other ones. And after they're done, I will bring you back and show you what they look like completely. When they are done, see, on that one you can tell it's only halfway done. When you're done, you serve it with butter and any kind of syrup that you think would be good, maple or honey or agave. And there it is, the finished product. I can't wait to dig into it. Growing up, my mama used to serve this with, obviously, with like eggs or sausage and bacon and things like that. And what I can say is the shelf life on this, if you keep it in the refrigerator, it will keep up to about a week, but it can also be frozen for up to 3 months. So it's something you can make, put in the freezer, and take out when you just want to have it and not have to worry about prepping it the night before. Okay, I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe, leave a comment, share with your friends, and give me a thumbs up. See you next time.